Welcome to our webinar on the path to digital twins, hype versus reality. This is actually the sixth in an executive webinar series that has been organized by AMC Bridge, and we've had some great conversations, some actually about the digital twin, some on some other topics. And today we really want to dig into not just what digital twins are, but how do companies get to them? What's the path to achieve them? And then kind of what's real and what's not in terms of what's available on the market, and how can companies accomplish them. For the participants, we have a Q&A tab that's available to you. Please enter your questions as we're speaking, and we'll get to as many as we can at the end of the webcast. I have some planned questions, and then we've got some questions that came in during registration, but we'll try and get to as many questions as we can. And if we don't get to your question during the presentation, we'll make sure to follow up with you after. This webinar will be recorded, so just to make sure everybody is comfortable with that. And again, presentation. Each of the panelists introduce themselves, and the question that I'm going to have them start with is, will you please introduce yourself and your company, but also let us all know a little bit about your company's role with digital twins. Why are digital twins interesting to your company, and what do you do around those? So, Jonathan, I'm going to start again with you. That was a warm up the last time.
Yeah, thanks, Jim. That's what happens in the new world. So Jonathan Girroir, TechSoft 3D. We are a software component creator and provider. So we make the nuts and bolts that go into software for CAD, CAM, PLM software, CMM software, anything that's 3D engineering. So we have graphics engines, data translation, 3D PDF generation, data fixing for 3D printing. So over 750 different software companies that are supporting 3D engineering are using our toolkits, many of which are these digital representations. And we've been supporting the digital twin or digitization of CAD for over 20 years and really seeing it blossoming now. So excited to be here with some of our partners. In fact, Ansys, Autodesk, Dassault, Epic Games, Unity, they all use our tools, and we're supporting this whole digital twin workflow in that way with technology.
Great. Well, thanks for joining. Samir, I'm going to move to you next. If you could give us a quick introduction.
Yeah, sure. Thanks, Jim. This is Samir Kher. The picture has the beard. That's post-COVID. It's gone. And I'm calling in today from Lyon, hence the hotel room. So yeah, I head up digital twins at Ansys. I've been with Ansys for about 17 years. For those of you who don't know, Ansys is in the business of selling simulation software. Simulation software is used traditionally to design products during the R&D phase and design phases. And what we're trying to do with digital twins, or are doing with digital twins, is actually to make that knowledge and know-how available in the context of operations. So that's our focus with digital twins, taking all of your engineering know-how and knowledge, making it easy to use in the context of operations, so you can better operate the equipment that you design using a software. Thanks, Jim.
Great. No, thank you, Samir. And Neil, if I can turn to you and have you introduce yourself and your company and role with digital twins.
Sure. Thanks, Jim. So I'm Neil Garnett. I'm the lead for Ericsson's transformation for our build services. Ericsson are a manufacturer of telecoms equipment, but we also build several 100,000 sites a year, and we're using digital twins to allow us to understand how we can industrialize that. We're relatively new compared to our colleagues here. We've been looking at digital twins for the last few years, and what we see is the potential to transform the telecoms industry by using this technology.
Fantastic, thank you. Igor, we're going to turn to you next, and thank you again to AMC Bridge for organizing these webinars.
Sure, it's a pleasure. It's endeavors that we never did before, and we are very pleased with the result, and we're happy that the community kind of supports us. We have a record registrations for this particular event. Just aside, AMC Bridge is software development consultancy we're doing, and we specialize in providing service for engineering, manufacturing, and construction industries. Doing it for 22 years, and we are kind of last step, so to speak, between the customer and the real digital twin if we are talking about digital twins, we are implementing them on the ground, so to speak, and having more and more requests from the field of implementation of digital twins. We really would like to kind of put this concept in perspective, both from what it means, and we discussed it in the previous time, is what it takes to implement. So I'm excited about the panel because we represent a lot of sides of this very complicated problem, I would say.
Great, thank you, Igor. Robert, if you can introduce yourself and Autodesk, and then also a little bit about your roles with the digital twin.
Yeah, thanks. Been with Autodesk for quite a number of years, always serving the AEC industry with software. Pretty much every spectrum of the Autodesk engineering and construction industry have I served over the years at Autodesk, about 25 years. Autodesk itself serves three industries. Autodesk engineering, architecture, engineering, and construction is by far our largest industry. We also serve the product design and manufacturing industry, as well as the media and entertainment industry. So anything that's designed and built in the world, we probably have some hand in. Anything that is manufactured, we likely have some hand in. And all of the games and videos and movies that you see, we logically have some hand in that too. So it's a large company with many things. On the digital twin front, we've been exploring this for a couple of years, really for two reasons. One, especially on the architecture, engineering, and construction side, our contractors are seeing many requirements for digital twins in their RFPs. We really want to help them, deliver a digital twin with the built project, and we feel that's a much more repeatable path for digital twins. And two, I think there's a big opportunity in terms of understanding the built environment and using that knowledge from the built environment to inform future design. So really completing that life cycle of data, if you will, from early stage planning through design, through construction, through operations, and then using that as-built knowledge to further future design and ensure we're designing and building things in a sustainable way for the world ahead.
Great. Thank you, and thanks to everybody again for joining, and to our participants. I think one of the things we've seen very clearly from our research is that digital twins are seen now as important or even critical to achieving companies' business strategy across a number of different industries. So they're very important. What do you see companies trying to achieve with their digital twins? And what are they most often able to achieve? What's sort of their goal, and then how far are they able to get? And we're going to go in the same order we did last time. So Jonathan, I'm going to go ahead with you.
Yeah, one of the real benefits is efficiency, because you're bringing information, and many times real-time information now, that allows you to make excellent real-time decisions, where you don't have one particular process, or even within your supply chain. You can do a digital twin of your supply chain. You don't have these bottlenecks. So it allows you to make really intelligent decisions. And additionally, because you have information at your fingertips, I like to think of digital twins not just as information, but as models, because we're really in this 3D space. You have very accurate representations of what you have on the floor, or in your factory, or in your building, and it allows those things to be maintained, and the digital footprint to kind of follow a product or a site through its life cycle. And so you're talking about cost cutting, talking about efficient decision making, better maintainability, as well as safety. So there's just a lot of opportunity using the digital twin in this space.
Great. Samir, and to you now, what do you see companies trying to achieve with digital twins, and what are they able to achieve?
Yeah, sure. So everything Jonathan said is absolutely correct. When we sort of look at our customers and how they're using digital twins, we see them use digital twin and drive sort of three values. The first is around kind of improving their profitability, improving the top line, and they do this by providing things like service models on top of the physical equipment that they might be selling. As you know, these tend to be higher margin, higher profitable opportunities. So that's one big area. We have companies like Kher Compressor selling compressed air as a service, and other examples where they use our digital twins to really create those kind of value streams. The second is around managing cost, so essentially the bottom line, things like warranty cost, maintenance cost, service cost, things like that, kind of managing that and minimizing that. And then the last, I'd say, is around gaining competitive edge. So increasingly, having a digital twin really differentiates you. It lets you get into areas like providing a sustainable solution, and just generally, if you can build digital twins even for your competitors' equipment, then you have a much higher chance of success and much higher revenue. So we see those three areas, and generally we find customers successful in each of these, which I can go into towards the end. Some of the other questions.
Great. Neil, what do you what are the goals and what's achievable in terms of digital twins?
It's quite interesting because we're both consumers of digital twins as well as vendor for digital twins, but we see, going back to what Robert said, a full life cycle view. So we manufacture equipment and design it using digital twins. We deliver equipment using digital twins, and we're introducing digital twins into our operations. And primarily we see a few benefits. One is the fact that we can reduce the life cycle times, and we can condense the data sets so we can enrich our understanding of what's going on. And for telecom specifically, there's quite a bit of simulation involved in digital twins. So we've got the physical elements and some basic logical elements, but we need to understand the complex relationship that RF properties, the radio interface, creates between the handsets that you have in your hand and the mobile base stations you see at the field, side of the field, the side of the road, on top of towers. And we need to, historically, the industry has had dislocated data sets, has had elongated times to design, build and operate, and the operate phase has been pretty much ineffective in certain domains. And what we see is collapsing those cycles, collapsing the data sets and visualizing them in a single entity significantly improves both our competitiveness as well as introduces value to our customers.
Fantastic. Igor, goals and what's being achieved?
Well, yeah, first of all, I think it's very little I can add to the overall pictures that previous speaker paint, but in my view, and efficiency is a name of the game. People are trying to gain efficiency in their operations, and by efficiency kind of improve ROI, et cetera. Just recently saw some research that shows that the construction industry alone in North America loses about $500 billion due to inefficiency of operations, et cetera, design, siloed data, et cetera. So a lot of people see the digital twin as a concept and a way to improve efficiency. The question, of course, is how to achieve it and how achievable it is as a whole, and what's the best way to do it. So.
Fantastic. Robert, to you in terms of goals and what you see companies achieving.
Yeah, I think building on Neil's comment a little bit there, it's about data driving actionable insight, right? And one of the things that we see consistently is owners have an incredible collection of siloed data out there, and the tools that they have, being able to aggregate that into the twin environment, start to correlate that information, starts to create that actionable insight. And where we're really seeing usage is, starting with just simple things like we planned and designed this building to meet these specifications. Maybe that's on a sustainability front. Where are we in terms of that actual building's performance, in terms of is it meeting what it was planned for? Is it operating the way it should? What can we do to tune that? And then also really streamlining and gaining efficiency throughout operations. That's the other place we see a lot of use case today, and that could be in facilities maintenance in terms of predictive maintenance on equipment to workflows like deciding where the capital improvement should be. So it's really in that set of workflows right now. It all comes back to efficiency.
Great. So we want to turn this to our audience and the attendees now, and we're going to launch a poll question. And what we'd really like to understand from each of you is how well has your company been able to achieve the vision it set out for digital twins? So we'll give people just a couple of 30 seconds or so to respond to this. So have you been able to fully reach the vision of your digital twins already, or maybe not at all, or somewhere in between? And if perhaps you're in a role that it's not applicable, or you don't know, feel free to go ahead and select the I don't know option at the bottom. but we'll give people a little bit of time to bring things in. We're starting to get some good responses. Okay, let's go ahead and share these results. And trying not to get a little bit disillusioned about this. 2% have fully realized their digital twin visions, and 16% mostly. But actually, I think that's not bad, honestly, because what we've seen is that people have very ambitious goals for digital twins, and that there are some complications getting there. And you know, a lot of companies are still in the process of moving themselves along. And maybe it's a little bit higher because 15% said they didn't know. So maybe we'll bump up the 2% to 3%, and it'll feel a little bit better. But you know, I think there's a clear message here that you know, companies have a lot of work still to do, and that not everybody is realizing the full vision of their digital twins yet. So let's go ahead and come back to our panel. And what I'd like to do is ask each of you, what barriers do you see companies facing in terms of achieving their digital twins? And Robert, in this time, we're going to start with you. And are the barriers more people, process, or technology challenges, or combinations of all of those things?
All of the above. And I say that because one, and I'm going to focus in on really large AEC owners, right? And we're thinking about healthcare and across the AEC industries, commercial real estate, data centers. You know, owners today don't really get out of the project lifecycle a good, clean set of data they can operate that facility with. They have to go back and revalidate all of those handover packages. So clean data is a part of the problem. Part of that is also back in the owner ecosystem, being able to clearly articulate in project requirements, this is the data I need at project handover to operate this facility effectively. Part of it is, you know, a people challenge. It requires a change in the way people think. You have to break down silos in organizations to implement a digital twin effectively. And the last part of the challenge is a technology challenge, because today most digital twins are very, very bespoke. We're spending a lot of money to create bespoke twins, as opposed to having, you know, some more commercial off-the-shelf offerings that does the bulk of it. It's always going to be an ecosystem of solutions working together. Don't get me wrong, but the more we can create a repeatable process through the right set of tools to enable digital twins and bring them to life, I think long-term what you'll see is eventually this turns into, you know, solutions that have a marketplace of integrations with other products, a marketplace of various types of analytics that can be plugged into these twins, and we'll eventually see that kind of scale. But market readiness is a big factor here, and market readiness is still in that early stage. So that's kind of the way we see it.
Yeah, thank you. And Igor, what do you think is holding companies back?
I agree with Robert that all factors are in play, but I would say that the first, people come first. If people at the top of the company or management who decides are not ready, then it's not going to go, regardless of the readiness of the industry. Most of the time we are approached when the management is convinced and owners are basically at least partially on the digital twin side of the equation, and then technology and processes kind of really makes it difficult. And I agree with Robert that the current movement on the part of the industry, software industry, toward platform approach may be a very kind of dramatic shift toward the opportunity to create digital twins, because it's never going to be one tool fits all. And especially with the digital twin is the specifics of their organizations and the business know-how that makes them unique, and every building is unique. So customization is needed. If you start very low, the expense is very high. But if you start with the components and platforms, the result may be achieved faster and it's more cost efficient. So I think at this point, if the original hurdle is crossed, people are on the digital twin side, then the technology, the question of proper technology becomes a very
Great. Neil, what are you experiencing as challenges to achieving the digital twin?
It's an interesting one because I kind of corroborate Robert and Igor's perspective, but for us, because digital twins are so transformative, it actually disrupts a large proportion of our organization and our customers' organization, and people are the primary barrier, because not only do you have to shift mindset, you have to change the way people are investing and the way they perceive the benefits and wanted outcomes of what they do. And then the second is the data that, especially in the industry that we service the telecoms industry, there's an enormous volume of data. And if you've got poor data quality going in, you're not necessarily going to get great data quality coming out, and the volumes of data need to be considered. And the last piece, and we're a technology company and our customers are technology companies, so the technology in itself isn't a major challenge we find. There's nothing that quite off the shelf fits our needs, but there's the ability to pull together the required components to solve the problems that we have. So I would see people, then data, then technology, in that kind of chronological order, if you like, as the barriers to entry for digital twins.
Great. Samir, what barriers are you seeing companies face?
Yeah, this is a tough one, because I think we're all gonna agree that it's some combination of all three. I'd also agree that it's people first. Maybe from a slightly different perspective, the digital twins we typically work with are related to product OEMs and product manufacturers, automotive and industrial equipment and others. So it's a slightly different perspective, but similar challenges. If you think of how digital twins get built and where the knowledge exists, which is typically in the engineering teams or in the operations team, and then they need to get put into place across the organization in a lot of different ways. They kind of break these silos, and you really need funding and you need investment from the sales organization, from the operations organization, as well as the R&D. It really changes the way customers think about how they manufacture equipment and how they sell equipment. On the other side of things, or the other sort of areas, I'd definitely say technology is a challenge. But there have been leaps and bounds made, I think, in terms of the capabilities. I think it's stitching everything together, the fact that it's all ecosystem, the fact that there's all these heterogeneous systems. Every sort of platform and system is independent and different, and they don't necessarily have good common sort of ways of interacting. But that's changing. Some of the work we do at the DTC helps. Some of the APIs that are getting built out are helping. But yeah, so I'd go in that order. The people, and then probably the kind of software and technology.
Yeah, and certainly not a lack of technology available at this point. There's plenty to choose from. Jonathan, what do you see as the barriers companies are facing?
Yeah, well, I'm not going to dissent. It seems pretty unanimous. All of us agree it's really people at the top. And that's because the organizations that we serve, the industries we serve, engineering, manufacturing, and construction, they're not very agile, and many times change adverse. And what was mentioned, like, how do you deal with that? Top down, if you have buy-in from up top, like work was mentioned already. But what we've seen really successful is finding one area of an organization and focusing on that as kind of a lighthouse project and investing resources in that. So if you want to be an agent for change or assist an organization to digitize and really embrace the digital twin, focus on one area and make it a win. And what that allows you to do is show the rest of the organization, look at the gains that we've got from this, and more of a bottom-up type approach, and show people the return on investment for digitizing your assets and utilizing all of this data coming in. I'm a technologist, a geek, and I think that there's solutions to all of these. There's a tremendous amount of technology out there. It's getting stitched together, right? So being able to aggregate that is important, but we're seeing more and more interoperability and these platforms that are really serving a number of different needs. And you can always configure something or bring in a service provider to really create your bespoke solution. So it takes work, but we have the solutions there. But it's really changing the minds of people and getting buy-in from them. That is, we see as the biggest struggle. But then when you have those believers, all of a sudden it flips it, and you're able to see quick adoption as well.
Oh, thank you all for that. And this next question is really about creating digital twins. We've already started to open up this topic as we started talking about barriers. And one of the ways I like to think about this is, is the digital twin a product, or is the digital twin an initiative or a consulting project? So I'm going to pose a question to Samir and Robert first and say, what's the most effective way to reach digital twin goals? Can a digital twin be bought off the shelf, or does it have to be assembled? And what components are important, and should they be bought or built? And I realize we've started this conversation, but Samir, I'm going to have you continue us down this path.
Yeah, sure. Certainly. So, sorry, 1 second here. Yeah, so I'd say the most effective way where we've seen customers succeed is by defining a business problem that they're trying to hire the digital twin to solve. Start from the end goal, start from the problem, start from, maybe if it's a twin that's going to help them with their warranty and service and maintenance, then look at your top failure modes and top issues, and then pick the one that's going to save you and give you the most value, and then build that. Sort of along the lines of what Jonathan said, show the end-to-end, show the value early. And then that helps get past all of these questions around organizational silos. Is there value? Is this a science project? And do we have to do hundreds of pilots? But if you have an end goal, and if you're not starting from R&D first and trying to build a science project, but starting from a business value first, I think that's really the way to go. And then once you've got that, then you work backwards and say, okay, what are the technology pieces I need? Do I need an IoT platform, or do I need some data analytics, or do I need simulation? What are the key components that I need to build in order to realize this value? Who's going to use it, and so on. So I'd say that's where we see success, when they start from the end and have a business sort of buy-in from the beginning.
Yeah, and not getting enamored by the technology, but by actually solving a real problem. Robert, I know you already talked about sort of maybe even where we are in the maturity of digital twins and moving more towards being productized. So maybe you can talk a little bit about that. But then, of the elements or components that are important to a digital twin, are there some that should be bought versus some that should be built? I mean, what kind of a recommendation would you give to people?
I think it comes back to outcomes, as Samir just very elegantly said. I think it's always a platform play. A digital twin is always an ecosystem. You're never going to go to one provider and buy a digital twin. I think that's a fallacy. I do think that over time, you'll see software solutions that drive a lot of repeatability, that drive a lot of value, and these solutions can be plugged together in a platform way to really deliver the outcomes people are looking for. But in addition to kind of Samir's comment around outcomes, don't try and boil the ocean. Don't try and solve every problem all at once. Start with something small, some tangible outcomes, understand how to achieve those outcomes, and be agile in terms of growing over time to solve more and more of the outcomes that you're looking to achieve. The biggest place I see people fail is trying to do too much right out of the gate, because they can't even get started. It's too big a problem. So break it down into something tangible, and then find the right solutions that help you solve that problem as easily as possible, writing as little code as possible, because you really want to create a plug and play environment here around digital twins, and that's what's really going to get you further along faster and towards your outcomes faster.
Neil, in a similar way, what do you think is more realistic, a best of breed or a platform approach? And are there pluses and minuses of each, or is it just what's available?
Yeah, for us, it's an interesting one because we're doing a bit of combination of both, if you like. So we've seen that, coming back to the previous conversation, we can have a complete solution off the shelf that doesn't exist, and we're tailoring it for a particular industry, so we need to make investments. But interestingly, the industry's catching up so quickly, it's a case of where do you invest and what makes sense. So we've got what I call a combination of a number of platforms, and we're taking best of breed to infill certain gaps, and then we're investing to collect and collate those components together. So it's not really a definitive answer, but I don't think there's going to be a definitive answer to this question. For us, realistically, we see that there's emerging technologies and platforms. None of them quite fits our need, but we expect in the coming years that's going to mature to the place where we can probably adopt that. So we might deprecate some of the investments today to adopt a best of breed capability in the future.
That's great insight. Jonathan, best of breed or platform, and what are the pluses and minuses maybe for each?
You know, it depends. I would never really want to paint myself into a corner though. So if I have a very specific need, finding the exact solution for that might fit it, but I would always want to think about future growth. And so if you look at a platform approach, you might not be using all the features, but it allows you to expand as your needs grow as well. One of the things we're seeing, different products out there, like the Azure Digital Twin and their IoT Hub, as well as the AWS Twin Maker. They're a platform. You're not going to go out and have to do a tremendous amount of software development to make something bespoke for your needs, but they're highly configurable. And so we're seeing this mix between, we have these software components, they work together kind of in this ecosystem, they bring data in well, but it does require some configuration, but that level of flexibility is really, really powerful, kind of tying in together all of these different data sources. And I think we're going to see more of that. So you don't have to have a software development team on staff to kind of build what you want or go to a service provider to do that, but you do need some expertise to build a graph and build a schema and kind of connect the dots.
Yeah. That's great. Igor, in terms of best of breed versus platform, you know, what are you seeing the availability and the reality of platforms versus best of breed today?
I would agree that evolution of technology, especially over several last years, was tremendous, and we have tool sets and platforms to start building digital twins. But I would like to kind of get back to already expressed notion of goal is important, and achievable goals. Setting yourself an achievable goal would set for success or failure of this initiative. And once goal is set, then the selection should begin, and then technology should fit the goal and not vice versa. Unfortunately, sometimes we've been approached with both rigid requirements. We need this, and we need to use this set of technologies, and that creates a tension because not necessarily these two things fits together. So my kind of approach is with respect to technology, it has to be component and platform because, as Robert emphasized, you could not buy digital twin off the shelf. There is not such thing. So you have to have tools that fit your goal, and for these particular goals, they have to be best. But there is also extraneous requirements maybe of corporate licenses, etc., but I'm not gonna go with that.
Fair enough. We've got another poll question now. We're going to turn it back to our attendees and ask: does your company view the digital twin as a product or as an initiative? Is it something you would like to buy or think you can buy, or is it something that you are pulling together on a project basis? So, you know, we've got the options for product, for initiative, or a combination of both. And again, if the question's not applicable to you, or if you're not sure what you think is best, please select the I don't know option at the bottom. We'll give people just another couple of seconds. I think there's a pretty clear perspective coming through. So let's go ahead and share the results back. You know, what we're definitely hearing here is that very few companies believe that it's a product, and maybe that is a maturation thing. It may be the time that we are in the industry. You know, certainly other technologies have started off as initiatives that have then become productized over time. So more people see it as an initiative, but there are others that say both, and I think that echoes very nicely what the panel said, is that there are definitely elements that you can bring in from a platform, but also that there's going to be additional work that needs to be done. Fantastic. Let's move back to our panel, and the next question that I'd like to ask everybody is, there are a lot of technology available. A lot of vendors are out selling digital twin solutions with just a wide range of capabilities, and some of them are overlapping, and some of them are very complementary. Everything from the infrastructure to run them on the cloud, to platforms, to analytics, and the actual applications to extract information and take action on digital twins. So I'd like to get an idea from the speakers. What of those capabilities do you feel are commercially available today for digital twins? And what are the most common gaps? What are the areas that companies need to maybe build their own technology or fill in for their platform that isn't available? Neil, I'm gonna start with you on this one. So what do you see as the elements that are kind of available, and what are the ones that are sort of the fly in the ointment?
I'm going to start from the last part of the question, Jim, because I think for me, the parts that aren't available are the things that create the most challenge. So we're looking at interpreting the information that we generate from digital twins through automation, machine learning, visual inspection, that kind of technology, and we see there's a need, a demand for that. You've got all this valuable insight, but how do you coalesce that into something that you can then translate into further enrichment of your understanding in the decision-making process, both for your products as well as your construction activities? The second thing is we're doing quite a bit of SI, so that there's gaps, or there's APIs and standardization evolving, but there's still gaps across the board where we need to connect certain elements so that we can address the full life cycle of our solutions and our products, as well as the construction project in itself. And then the last piece, I suppose, is once we translated that information, once we visualized it, we need analytics. We need a way of creating complex queries, visualizing those, addressing workflow and visualization of that data for the end user in a way that they can consume it most effectively. When it comes to what exists, I mean, ingesting generic data from the field, presenting that, addressing that data in different ways, and then translating it into a design of some kind and using that as a digital twin, those elements, that basic generic capability is relatively mature. So it's for us, it's taking that data, ensuring that it's efficient in its flow, enriching it, translating the data using machine learning and automation, and then ingesting and providing the ability to create analytics and making more value and enrichment out of the data itself.
Right. Igor, I know that that you get called on to fill the gaps in many cases. So what do you see as some of the gaps that most commonly need to be filled versus what's maybe a little bit more available off the shelf?
I would echo Neil and say that the biggest thing is that interoperability, basically data silos and inability of systems to talk to each other, limitations of API, etc. It's getting much better. I mean, it used to be 10 years ago, big companies thought that they could be only software providers for a specific enterprise. It no longer seems to be the case, and people are turning on to open systems and creating APIs. So interoperability in data, seamless data flow between parts is one, but also analysis. What do you do with data? How do you extract the valuable information? And most importantly, how do you predict the future? Tools from Ansys and other vendors definitely help, but there's still limitations. For example, trivial as licensing. How many can you use this particular piece of software as a server component versus desktop components? And it still exists. It's getting better. But I with Neil, there's two major areas: analysis and kind of basic predictable analytics. Quite a few people talking about predictable analytics. It's getting there because Google opening the AI toolkit and similar initiatives that they may in the future, but it's still niche.
Great, thank you, Igor. And Jonathan, in a similar way, you get asked to build components. So what are you seeing as those gaps that are being requested to be filled?
Yeah, day in and day out, that's what we're working on, is, as Igor was talking about, breaking those barriers, making sure that there's interoperability of that data, that it can be shared outside of those ecosystems, the walled gardens of some of the large vendors out there, like Dassault, Siemens, Autodesk. Standards are really big, making sure that we're able to just, your data is your data, and we don't care what system you're using it within. The other real challenge that is also a good challenge, is exciting, is the federation of all of this. So now you have like multiple data channels. So it could be construction information and mechanical designs and as-built point clouds that you want to retrofit your existing digital twin into. So and then analysis data too. So talking about what Ansys does, there's all of this very different data. How do we bring that all together in a meaningful way? So that's a an opportunity. Now we have very rich information. And then probably the third place is, we got all that data, we're able to bring it in. How do we automate the creation of an experience that meets the business needs and answers the questions for our key stakeholders? And so you have all of that, but how can I boil it down to a very specific set of needs to answer a specific set of questions without having to go in and do a ton of custom work? So the automation, giving enough authoring tools so that when the users sit down, they have the information that they need in real time.
Great. Samir, I'm going to turn to you next on this. What do you think is easily available, and where are the gaps that need to be filled?
Yeah, and I mean, I think I completely agree with the answers that have been kind of delivered so far. When I think of digital twins and how customers adopt them, I sort of think of like three basic layers, very high level of abstraction. There's an infrastructure layer, things like sensorizing your equipment, adding the communication infrastructure, the compute infrastructure, all of that sort of falls in that layer. Then there's an application enablement layer, your IoT platform, data lake, data management. That's probably the next layer. And then right on the top is analytics, right? Making sense of the data that you're collecting and getting value out of it. And so there's solutions and technologies and providers in each of these. And I think that one of the big challenges that was mentioned is all of the heterogeneity of the platforms that exist, all the APIs that are different. But that, I think there is, as you heard from the panelists, right, there's progress being made there. I think that's a problem that can be solved, is surmountable, and we will see it be solved and made better in the near future, I would think. And there's already kind of solutions that help. One of the things I've mentioned that I think both Neil and Jonathan hit on or alluded to is the domain knowledge sort of piece. And you had a question earlier on, what should companies look to buy and what should they kind of focus on in-house? I think there is no replacement for domain knowledge. That's the core competency of most of these companies. They know exactly when a particular failure mode happens, what's going to happen to their battery, or things like that. How do they best fix a particular pump? I think if companies want to focus on things and keep their competitive edge and extend it, that's maybe the area that they really should focus on, rather than building out IoT platforms on their own or trying to add things. So focus on the domain knowledge. That's very unique and specific to your organization.
Yeah, Samir, great advice. Robert, I think you were left here, and I know we've given you a lot to agree with. Maybe what do you see as gaps that have to be filled versus what's available today?
I agree with Samir on that domain knowledge piece. I think that's critical. I think that the infrastructure providers and the platform providers are filling a lot of the gaps, and we're starting to see a lot of good work on analytics and AI kind of at the top end of that start to evolve. From my perspective, though, building a twin today is just way too hard. We have to be able to automate that process so that you can easily start to create a twin and then start to add that domain knowledge and intelligence to derive value. So for me, where a place that I think the biggest gap is finding ways to easily automate twin creation and get to value faster. That is the way we get to democratization and greater market availability of this capability, but it's got to be done in a way that is very plug and play. because there's no solution out there that's just going to magically do all of this. So we have to also be able to have that plug and play interoperability. So for me, it's automation is really the key and the biggest gap right now.
Oh, fantastic. So this is going to be my final question before I've got some fantastic questions that have come in from the attendees. So I'm going to try and get to as many as those. There are clearly a lot of hype and a lot of myths about digital twins that are out in the market. It's a lot easier to make a digital twin on PowerPoint probably than, in reality. So for each of you, in 10 or less words, what would you say is the biggest myth about the ability for companies to meet digital twin goals? Jonathan, I'm going to start with you.
It's too hard, too complicated, too expensive. So the advice is start small, start now. And we saw it's a journey. From our first poll, it's a journey. So start now, and you'll start being able to realize that investment.
Right, Robert?
Yeah, I think I would agree with Jonathan almost 100%. It's really how do we, don't say it's too hard. It's not too hard. Understand some initial outcomes, break it down into that, and then, implement something pragmatic to start with, and then build from there. So break down the problem, and the biggest challenge I see is people having trouble breaking down the problem into something tangible that they can go out and implement. That's the biggest barrier.
Great, Samir. What is the biggest myth you see?
Yeah, and to be, like the other panelists here, to be a little bit self-serving, I think the biggest myth is that digital twins are a science project, something in the future and not available today. We've seen customers apply them and use them successfully today. The leaders are sort of making moves, so it's about time that everybody sort of jumps in and starts working on these. We put out, customer stories from the likes of Tata Steel, NG, Wärtsilä, Kher, Verbund. Lots of these companies have started to use and see value. So, just look at those, learn from them, and start building out your digital twins. Don't wait.
All right, Neil, biggest myth that we can clear up today.
Two myths actually from me. One is it's one thing. We've got 16 digital twins in Ericsson. They're all doing something very different. So there's different digital twins that exist. And the second thing, it's going to solve all your problems. Just to build on what Robert said, focus on an area of value and grow from there. So find where you can plant the seeds of digital twins and then grow them. It's not going to solve all your issues day one. So those are the two. It's not just one thing, and you need to start somewhere.
All right, Igor, bring us home with the biggest myth.
I mean, it's all been said, and I totally agree that the two biggest things. First, a full dismissal. Say it's not for me. It's another kind of marketing buzzwords. Just ignore it. It's not true. It's very powerful idea. But again, it's idea. It's not a product, and it's not one thing that you can do and finish and done. It's a journey, and you have to start somewhere with a small goal that shows the biggest ROI. And it's a dynamic thing. It has to evolve over time. It could not be finished once and for all. It's a living and breathing organism, so to speak.
Yeah, I couldn't agree more. And I think if I added one other myth is that it's a brand new thing. I mean, it's the digital twin. I think it's the culmination of a lot of things we've been trying to do in the industry for years, and now a lot of it is available and able to be applied in ways that maybe we could have dreamed of before, but is now much more available. One of the questions I want to see if anybody has an opinion on, and I'll just go with kind of a panel can chime in. What do you think about cloud infrastructure availability for hosting digital twins? Is that ready? Is it available? Is there a gap there? Anyone with some key thoughts on that? Question from the audience.
I mean, I can jump in maybe really quickly. Jonathan mentioned Azure Digital Twins and AWS IoT Twin Maker. Both of these are already commercially available. They scale well. They use Kubernetes and container technologies there. REST APIs are there. So I'd say it's a key enabler. You don't always need to use the cloud, because we see lots of situations where you want to use edge for the communication latency and things like that. But I would say a lot of those technology pieces, as we've said before, exist. Stitching them together is still a challenge, but the infrastructure pieces, quite a few of them do exist, I would argue. But yeah, happy to hear from this.
I would say they're kind of in their infancy, so they're maturing as well. So in terms of like availability, they're there, but for some of those, like those APIs, they're continuing. I think both launched within the last couple of years during COVID, and so they're continuing to mature. Not that people aren't building technology on top of it, but the other thing is the sites that we work at aren't connected many times. We do work with people that are creating digital twins of mine sites out in the middle of Australia, and well, I guess with Starlink now you can start connecting those, but traditionally that's been one of the challenges, is making sure that if you do have something up on a server, that you're able to have that local and be able to sync them in an intelligent way.
I was going to add that, I think Azure and AWS are both rapidly expanding in terms of infrastructure and platform capability. They both also offer edge capability, which is pretty effective at managing data, moving data from the edge to the cloud, and even processing data at the edge in some cases. So, I mean, there's definitely capability there, and it continues to mature, but the core capabilities are there. And I think both those companies are heavily invested in continuing to kind of build the right infrastructure to enable people to build digital twins. So,
great. I'm going to move us on to another question because it hasn't come up. One of the audience members was talking about a component that I don't think we've heard about yet, which is what do you see as the role of augmented reality in optimizing the use and value of digital twins? Is it important? Is it available? Is it something companies are really striving for at the moment?
The metaverse.
All right, let's just end right there. The metaverse. That's all you have to say. No, go ahead. Continue on that.
Yeah, I'll give a quick answer. I think it's not there yet, but I think it's part of everyone's goals is to be able to, be in the field and not only be able to physically see that machine, but understand everything about that machine, its characteristics, its maintenance history, and everything else. And the way we'll empower that is through something like AR, VR, and augmented reality. So I think it's coming. I don't think it's here yet. That's my personal perspective.
That's our take on it as well. So that it's our ambition. We're taking steps to get there, but it's going to be a little while before we achieve it.
From my side, there is a lot of interest on this type of digital twin component, I would say, and it also fits with the predictive analytics goal that AR VR allows to visualize what's going to be or what's planned to be in this space, kind of align is what is already in, especially in construction. I think it's a huge area that needs to be explored and kind of developed, but interest on the field exists, and it's quite capable, quite sizable from my perspective, from what we see.
We do real work on desktops, right? Like if we're going to design something, our desktop has really, and the software on it has really matured to be able to do that. The headsets, they do a good job of maybe seeing and visualizing that design. It was definitely great for the trade show demos, but in terms of real work happening on these headsets, not happening right now, maybe in the future. However, when you talk about augmented reality, we all have a device in our pocket. And we do see on a larger form factor, having a tablet, being able to overlay the digital twin or just information on top of a video feed is already being used for maintenance and training. And that is a real opportunity, is how do you use all of these digital assets, put them on a tablet, overlay them onto wherever you are, and that's already being used and it's highly effective.
Yeah, we've also seen some interesting projection technologies where it's actually not a device, it actually is projecting directly onto, say, a part of product or a part of a building. We've got a whole series of questions in here that I just want to see if we can maybe get just a quick answer from each of you on this whole series of questions on interoperability and standards. And maybe if you can just give us a thumbnail of what your company is doing to help drive forward interoperability and standards. And we're running out of time, so if everybody can kind of just, I want to make sure to get this in, but I want to make sure that we're a little brief. So Jonathan, I'm going to start with you on that.
Yeah, I mean, I saw a couple other questions about STEP AP242. So we're enabling our partners, our customers, the software companies out there making the digital twin software. We're enabling them with standards and opening those up and supporting them. So it could be STEP, JT for 3D printing, AMF, IFC for digital construction. That's the game we're in. They're continuing to evolve, but we want to democratize this for everybody to use, including PMI. So even some of the not CAD standards, but making sure that PMI gets provide API level access to all that data. So it's out there. You just have to unlock it and use it.
Very good, Samir.
Yeah. So likewise, we actively participate in standards organizations across the board. FMI is one that's in the simulation space that's relevant. But we're also part of a founding member of actually the Digital Twin Consortium, where we do work on some of these aspects as well. We partner closely with the likes of Microsoft on their DDDL language, and as AWS evolves their APIs, we do as well. So yeah, I think there's a very clear realization that digital twins is not going to be it is an ecosystem play. The easier we make it to integrate across the different product and technologies, the better it is for our customers. So, yep.
Igor.
Well, we are on the receiving age of this thing, and I'm a little bit skeptical about standards. It's proven to be very slow, and every vendor tries to twist it in each other's way. And a big example is IFC, right? Everyone is using custom part of it, and that's basically negate the whole process. I'm more optimistic about the API approach and platform approach, but long-term standards are important. But the industry changes so fast that standard process is very slow for that. This is my opinion. But
all right.
Of course, we are using it.
I agree with Igor. I think standards take a long time to develop. They're very important long-term, but they take time. So it starts with open data access and interoperability through APIs. And as those standards develop, making sure those standards are implemented in a pragmatic way so that you have access and can ensure those standards actually start to meet some practical good over time. There's lots of good standards out there in development, real estate core, brick schema, building smarts, building some standards around open data and data for the AEC ecosystem. So I mean, all of this is happening, and it's happening in parallel. We'll also part of the Digital Twin Consortium. But it's slow moving, and so initially it's really about open data and APIs.
Good. Neil, anything to add?
Just briefly, I mean, we are more consuming the outcome, the creation of the digital twins, the outcome of that data. So intra-systems interoperability is less important as part of the technology we're building. So we're following BIM and other standards so that we can export our data to other parts of our customers and our own environments.
Great. Thank you all. I realize we went over a little bit in here. We started a little bit late, but I want to thank all the panelists for staying with us in this. Thank you to the audience. And thank you again to AMC Bridge for just doing a tremendous job organizing these webinars. You will, if we didn't get to your question and specifically some of the specific standards, for example, AMC Bridge will follow up on the unanswered questions. And I recommend actually if companies have a chance to go back and look at any of the prior webcasts, I think some of the questions that were asked actually have been addressed in some of the earlier webcasts. So I definitely recommend those as well. They've been really valuable. So with that, I thank you all and wish everybody well on their digital twin path.
Thank you. Thank you.
Thanks, everyone.